He slammed his hand on the table so hard the silverware jumped. "How dare you stand there and act like you're better than her?" My father's voice thundered across the dining room, drowning out the clinking dishes and the soft murmurs that followed the funeral. My mother gasped, and my sister clutched her wine glass with trembling fingers, but I didn't flinch. I just stared at him, at the man who raised me to believe in responsibility, now calling me heartless for not bailing out the very person who lit our grandfather's legacy on fire. Hey everyone, welcome to HD Reddit Stories. What would you do if your family expected you to clean up a disaster you didn't cause? Would you give in for the sake of peace, or walk away to protect your dignity? If you've ever been blamed for doing the right thing, you're going to want to hear this. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button. We've got more stories that'll make you question what family really means. Now back to that moment, my dad glaring at me like I was a disgrace. "She's your sister," he spat. "She made a mistake, and you're just going to abandon her?" My aunt muttered something about forgiveness. My uncle shook his head in disappointment. The weight of their judgment wrapped around me like a noose. And still, I said nothing. Not because I didn't have words, but because I had spent the last year screaming them into the void. My sister gambled away every last dollar she inherited. Not just her share, she convinced me to sign over mine, promising she had a business opportunity that would benefit us both. I was 19, grieving our grandfather, and stupidly desperate to believe she cared. She didn't. The business was a slot machine addiction in Vegas, and she burned through the money like it was cursed. Now she was back, broke, humiliated, and they wanted me to save her. Again. I looked around the table. These weren't mourners honoring a man who taught me everything I knew about integrity. These were vultures circling, expecting me to bleed so she wouldn't have to. My dad wasn't asking me to help, he was demanding I sacrifice. But I wasn't going to do that anymore. They didn't just want my help. They expected my sacrifice. From the outside, people always assumed my sister and I were close. We were the kind of siblings who posed perfectly for Christmas cards and smiled at weddings, dressed in matching colors, arms around each other like we'd never fought a day in our lives. And maybe, in the beginning, we were close. When we were kids, she used to sneak into my room when there were thunderstorms and hide under my blanket. I'd pretend to be brave for both of us, whispering stories until she fell asleep. Back then, I would have done anything to protect her. But something shifted when we got older. She started skipping school. Nothing dramatic at first, just a few absences here and there. My parents chalked it up to stress. But I noticed the way her eyes darted when they asked questions, the way she always seemed to have a new excuse, a new story. Then came the partying, the borrowed cash that was never returned, the mysterious bruises that just happened. By the time she turned 21, she was practically living in casinos. I stayed on the straight path: college, internships, part-time jobs, and late nights at the library. My grandfather, our mother's father, was the only one who truly seemed to notice. He used to call me the old soul, said I reminded him of himself. He never judged my sister, not out loud, but I could tell he saw the truth too. And in the last year of his life, when cancer took everything but his mind, he asked me one favor. Don't let her drag you down. Then he died. And with him went the last anchor of reason in our family. When his will was read, I felt the floor shift beneath me. He had left his estate, 2 houses, a sizable savings account, and a small but profitable antique business, to be split between my sister and me. 50-50. No trust funds, no restrictions. Just faith. I remember looking at her that day, wondering what she would do. I thought maybe this would be her reset button. A way to start over. She didn't waste a second. Within weeks, she approached me with a plan. She was excited, animated, talking about investing in a boutique hotel with a friend she met in Reno. She showed me printouts, half-finished business proposals, even fake contracts. I wasn't stupid, but she made me feel like a paranoid villain for hesitating. She cried, accused me of not trusting her, said this was the one time she needed me to believe in her. I caved. She asked me to sign a power of attorney. Just for this transaction. So the money could be handled faster. She assured me my name would still be on the deed. I didn't read everything. I didn't want to insult her again. I signed it. 3 months later, the hotel never happened. The money was gone. She ghosted me. No explanations. No apologies. Just silence. At first, I was furious. Then heartbroken. Then humiliated. I went to my parents. My mother looked devastated, but all she could say was, "She's struggling." My father's response? "You should have known better." As if I had handed a match to a known arsonist and expected my house to stay intact. They didn't comfort me. They comforted her. And yet, somehow, I still tried to fix it. I applied for more hours at work, tried to recover, buried myself in anything that wasn't family. When I tried to press legal action, my mother begged me not to. "You'll destroy her," she said. "This will ruin her forever." I didn't want that. I just wanted what was mine back. But I let it go. She returned nearly a year later, broke, tired, and suddenly full of regret. That's when the dinner happened. The table. The yelling. The accusations. They said I was selfish. That I turned my back on my own blood. No one mentioned the theft. No one said a word about how she lied to me, forged documents, erased my future without a second thought. They talked about family, but only when it was time for me to give. It hit me during one of those long nights, sitting alone in my apartment, rereading the scanned copies of the papers she had tricked me into signing. I noticed something odd, an inconsistency in the notarization. The date didn't match the stamp. I dug deeper, pulled records, compared signatures, and realized what I had missed. The documents weren't just misleading. They were fraudulent. I had grounds. But pressing charges meant war. And more than that, it meant fully accepting that she wasn't coming back. Not really. I told myself it wasn't worth it. That letting go would bring me peace. But peace never came. Just pressure. They started calling again. My mom would cry over the phone. "She's in trouble again, she needs you." I started avoiding them. Ignoring texts. Skipping family events. That's when the guilt campaign started. Cousins. Aunts. Even my childhood friends. "She's still your sister. People make mistakes. She's sick, you know. If you loved her, you'd help." I was supposed to love her enough to bleed for her, but she didn't have to love me enough not to stab me in the first place. Every time I said no, they treated it like I had committed some moral crime. Every no was a betrayal in their eyes. Every boundary I drew became evidence of my cold heart. And slowly I realized, I wasn't just losing a sister. I was losing a family. But maybe that wasn't such a bad thing. Because if family meant always giving, never receiving, if it meant swallowing your pain so others could feel better about themselves, then maybe family wasn't worth saving. Maybe the only thing worth saving was myself. After that night at the dinner table, I didn't speak to anyone for weeks. No calls. No texts. Not even a word to my mother, who left 4 voicemails asking me to just hear them out. I couldn't. Every time I thought of my father's face twisted in rage, my sister sitting silent like a porcelain doll cracked beyond repair, my stomach churned. What struck me most wasn't the betrayal, it was their expectation. They didn't deny what she did. They just didn't care. They believed I owed her anyway. That I was the one tearing this family apart simply because I said, "Enough." But I hadn't said my final word yet. Not really. Not officially. Because when I found that discrepancy in the documents, the notarization error, the timestamp that didn't align, I knew something was off. At first, I doubted myself. Maybe I was grasping at straws. But something inside me refused to let go. So I called a lawyer. Not a family friend. Not someone from our community. A specialist in estate and inheritance law from the other side of the state. I handed him everything. The scanned copies of the power of attorney, the wire transfers, the supposed investment contracts my sister had printed out. I told him the story from beginning to end, leaving out nothing, not even my own stupidity. He leaned back, clicked his pen, and said, "This isn't just a case of someone blowing money. This is fraud. And from what I see, it was premeditated." The word hit me like a slap. Fraud. Not a mistake. Not a moment of weakness. Premeditated fraud. And that changed everything. I hired him on the spot. We began the process of formally requesting a revocation of the power of attorney due to deception, filing complaints with the notary commission over the altered stamp, and gathering every shred of correspondence between my sister and me. Emails, texts, even voice messages. I didn't care how much it cost. It wasn't about the money anymore. It was about truth. And boundaries. The first step was sending out cease and desist letters to my family. Not out of spite, but because the harassment had gotten out of hand. Cousins were messaging me threats. An uncle said I was cursed for abandoning blood. I was done playing nice. Every letter was carefully worded: stop the pressure or face legal consequences. The backlash was instant. My father called me, roaring this time, not just yelling. "You're suing your own sister? You ungrateful little..." I hung up before he finished. My mother wrote a letter. A handwritten, tear-stained letter about family, forgiveness, and how my grandfather would be ashamed of me. I kept it. Not because I valued it, but because I wanted to remember exactly what they thought of me. Then my lawyer found the smoking gun. A bank statement, buried in a subpoenaed record, that showed my sister had transferred $30,000 of my share into her boyfriend's account before the hotel scheme even existed. It wasn't just a bad investment. She had stolen from me before even pretending to invest. We filed for recovery of misappropriated assets under fraudulent circumstances. If we won, she'd owe me everything back, and more. Then came the real turning point. My lawyer received a call from her lawyer. A settlement offer. She wanted to avoid going to court. She offered to give back half the amount, no apology, just silence. I declined. And that's when the panic set in on her side. Because discovery was going to be public. The court would see everything: the lies, the falsified papers, the abuse of family trust. She couldn't handle the exposure. Neither could my parents. The illusion of a functional, loving family would be shattered. So she escalated. She went online. She posted on Facebook. A long, tearful post about how her little brother had turned into a cold-hearted monster. She accused me of greed. Of trying to ruin her life. When she was already in recovery. She framed it as if I was attacking a mentally ill woman just trying to rebuild her world. The likes poured in. Support from friends who knew nothing about the truth. She tagged me. I said nothing. But my lawyer advised otherwise. We crafted a legal response, served her a takedown request, and added defamation to our growing list of charges. She took the post down after 3 days, but the damage was done. Or so she thought. Because I had quietly been building my case, and my team had more than just legal ammunition, we had receipts. Literal ones. From hotels she visited under fake names. Casino charges. Screenshots of private group chats where she bragged about her wins, mocked gullible family, and even mentioned using my signature without me reading the doc. We submitted everything to the court. The hearing date was set. She didn't show up. Instead, her lawyer entered a full liability admission on her behalf. She was too distressed to attend. The judge was unsympathetic. Within 2 weeks, the court ruled in my favor: full financial restitution, plus legal costs, and a court-issued declaration of fraud on record. That meant any further financial activity she tried, loans, real estate, credit cards, would be impacted. Her credit? Destroyed. Her image? Tarnished. My parents? They were silent. Until the eviction notice came. You see, one of the properties my grandfather left us, an old lake house, had been, temporarily occupied, by my parents and sister. They never put their names on anything. Because legally it was mine. I had let them use it out of politeness. That changed. My lawyer sent formal notice. They had 30 days to vacate. My mom called me sobbing. My dad didn't call at all. And my sister? She finally texted me after 2 years of silence. You didn't have to do this. I stared at the message for a while. Then I replied, you did this. I just stopped letting it happen. After the eviction, they moved in with relatives. I heard whispers, how my father had turned bitter, how my sister tried working at a diner but got fired after yelling at a customer, how my mother told everyone I was dead to her. And yet I slept better than I ever had. Because for the first time, I had chosen myself. I didn't throw a tantrum. I didn't scream. I didn't beg for justice. I brought the receipts. I played the long game. And when the smoke cleared, I was still standing. Not angry. Not broken. Just free. The morning after the court ruling, I woke up to sunlight flooding through my apartment window. It felt different, sharper somehow, like the air had finally cleared after a storm I didn't know I'd been living in. For the first time in what felt like years, there were no texts, no missed calls, no guilt messages. Just quiet. My kind of quiet. It wasn't peace, exactly. I knew what I'd done had burned bridges that would never be rebuilt. But standing in the ruins, I didn't feel regret. I felt clean. The lawyer called that afternoon to confirm that restitution was already in motion. They had frozen one of my sister's accounts and filed liens against assets she'd hidden under her ex-boyfriend's name. You won't get it all back, he said plainly. But you'll get enough. And she'll never pull this again. That was enough for me. I didn't celebrate. No champagne. No grand announcement. Just a walk around the block and a coffee from the corner shop I used to visit before all this chaos started. The barista, a girl who once called my sister so cool, smiled and asked, "How's your family doing?" I answered with a smile of my own. Quiet. In the weeks that followed, I started reclaiming parts of myself I didn't realize I'd lost. I returned to my painting, something I hadn't done since college. I went on a trip by myself, just a weekend drive along the coast, windows down, music up, no destination in mind. It wasn't extravagant, but it felt like freedom. I never got a real apology. Not from my father. Not from my sister. My mother did send a single message, 5 words. "I hope you're doing okay." I didn't respond. I didn't hate her. I just couldn't let her back in. Not yet. Maybe not ever. My sister, I heard, had left town. Rumor was she moved to Arizona with a distant cousin who didn't know the whole story. She was working nights, apparently. Struggling. Some part of me pitied her. Another part reminded me of the years I spent carrying the weight she dumped on me, the life I had to rebuild brick by painful brick. I didn't need her to suffer. I just needed her out of my life. The lake house? I didn't sell it. I kept it. Not out of spite, but because it was the last place my grandfather and I had shared a real moment together. I restored it. Fresh paint, new floors, even brought in an old rocking chair like the one he used to sit in. Sometimes I'd go there on weekends, light a fire, and just sit on the porch. Alone. Content. One evening, nearly 6 months later, I got an email from a family friend. A short message. "They're asking about you. Your parents. They say they miss you." I stared at that email for a long time. It's funny, when I was in the thick of it, I wanted them to reach out. To say they were wrong. To ask for forgiveness. But now that I'd built a life without the toxicity, without the manipulative love, I didn't need it anymore. You see, the people who demand your forgiveness often do so not because they've changed, but because your absence cost them something. Their comfort. Their pride. Their image. But forgiveness without accountability is just permission to be hurt again. And I was done giving that. Eventually, I wrote a letter, not to them, but to myself. I wrote everything I had held back. The resentment, the grief, the loneliness, the clarity. I burned it. Let the smoke rise. Let it go. That was my closure. Not a grand reunion. Not a dramatic apology. Just a choice. Mine. So no, I didn't go back. I didn't answer their calls. I didn't send a holiday card or check in on birthdays. I let the silence stand. And in that silence, I found space. To grow. To breathe. To finally become the person I could have been if I hadn't spent so long trying to carry everyone else. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this. Sometimes, the best thing you can do for the people who hurt you is disappear from the role they expect you to play. Not out of vengeance, but out of respect for yourself. And that's what I did. I disappeared. And in doing so, I found myself. Sometimes the most painful part of growing up isn't the mistakes you make, it's realizing the people who are supposed to protect you, love you unconditionally, and support your growth, never actually did. Or worse, they only did when it was convenient for them. This story isn't just about betrayal or lost money. It's about boundaries. About learning to say no in a world, especially a family, where saying no is treated like treason. The truth is, we're often raised to believe that family comes before everything. That blood is thicker than water. That if someone shares your last name or your childhood, they deserve unlimited chances. But no one talks about what happens when family becomes the very thing that keeps you stuck. When forgiveness is weaponized. When your kindness is mistaken for weakness and your silence is taken as permission. The lesson I had to learn, the hard way, is that love without respect isn't love. That sacrifice without appreciation isn't noble, it's toxic. And that sometimes, protecting yourself means disappointing people who never had your best interests at heart to begin with. I spent years shrinking myself to make others comfortable. I gave money I couldn't afford to lose. I swallowed my anger to keep the peace. I wore guilt like a second skin because they told me I was wrong for standing up for myself. But the moment I decided to stop, to reclaim my voice, my space, my future, that's when I began to heal. It's not easy. Choosing yourself will always feel wrong at first when you've been taught that love equals self-abandonment. You'll question yourself. You'll feel lonely. You'll wonder if maybe they were right. But that discomfort is part of the process. Growth always comes with grief, the grief of what you hoped your family could be, and the reality of what they actually are. Forgiveness is a beautiful thing. But it's not a free pass. It's not something you owe to people just because you shared DNA. True forgiveness only works when there's accountability, change, and the willingness to rebuild trust. Without that, forgiveness is just another way to keep yourself chained to people who broke you. What I've learned is that you're allowed to walk away. From guilt. From manipulation. From people who demand your loyalty but offer none in return. You are allowed to say, "This is not healthy for me," and leave, even if it means walking away from those who raised you. Especially if it means that. And when you do, when you stop watering dead plants and start tending to your own garden, you'll find peace. It won't be instant. It won't be perfect. But it will be real. You'll learn to enjoy your own company again. You'll build friendships that aren't rooted in obligation, but in mutual respect. You'll stop flinching every time your phone rings. You'll breathe deeper. Sleep better. Feel lighter. One day, you'll look back, not with bitterness, but with clarity. And you'll see that choosing yourself wasn't selfish. It was survival. It was the first time you truly loved yourself the way you always deserved to be loved. And maybe that's the hardest, most powerful lesson of all. Sometimes the healthiest thing you can do is become the person your family never taught you to be.